Okay. My name is Rich. I'm the Marketing Director at Clevertouch. And joined this afternoon by Paul Shefferd, who is one of our enablement consultants in our wider consultancy team at Clevertouch. If this is your first time using the Butter platform, you can get involved by sending in questions. There should be a menu bar down the left-hand side of your screen. Feel free to pop questions and comments in as and when you have them. Please don't feel that you have to wait until the end. It's great for us to see them, and if we can, we'll answer them along the way rather than just saving everything to the end. There's also a React button on the left-hand side, which is really great for us as presenters because it lets us know that you're awake and engaged. Thank you for the thumbs up. Wow, there we go. Lovely. So please feel free to use that throughout the session. It's a good indicator for us as to what's resonating with you content-wise. And makes us feel all nice and warm inside when we see the hearts and the thumbs up too. So that's great. Okay, so for those of you that aren't familiar or as familiar with us at Clevertouch, we're Europe's leading Martech consultancy. We're a team of 70 based just outside Winchester in the south of the UK. And we were founded in 2009 by a couple of marketeers, for marketeers. We live and breathe marketing technology with the purpose of helping you and wider organizations make sense of it and the ever-changing landscape that it sits within. Some of you may be familiar with the Martech spine philosophy, which is a concept that we created, or one of our founders, Adam Sharp, created with the intent of making marketing technology as simple as possible for marketeers. It's a very crowded and can be confusing landscape with the sheer volume of marketing technology platforms that are out there. So the Martech spine aims to help marketeers prioritize and simplify the platforms that matter most to their business and how they can integrate together and complement one another for maximum marketing performance. We also conduct some research every year into Martech called the State of Martech, cleverly named. And the 5th edition of that research is actually due out in the next week or so. So everyone that's signed up for this webinar will receive a copy of that report to your inbox sometime in the next couple of weeks. And that gathers insights on how marketing technology is being used and invested in by marketeers in the UK, Europe, and the US. More specifically around our consultancy offering and partnership with Salesforce, we've been a partner, as you can see on screen, since 2010. And we were one of the first consultancies to bring Pardot to the European market. It's a platform that we've got a lot of expertise in. Paul himself is a certified Salesforce administrator, a Pardot consultant, and a marketing cloud developer, no less. So he spends a lot of his time in the platforms, helping clients create bespoke enablement plans to make sure that the marketeers can fully maximize Pardot and the other platforms that Pardot needs to work with. But the purpose of this webinar today is because data visibility is a challenge that comes up from time to time with some of our Salesforce and Pardot clients, in that sales users may often struggle to have enough visibility of how their leads, contacts, and prospects and the wider accounts that they sit within are engaging with content and the activity that they are engaging with, how they're engaging with the content that marketing are creating and putting out there. So we wanted to share some guidance today on how you can utilize the campaigns functionality in Salesforce in the first instance, and then go a step further by how you can visualize that data in a really nice, clean way for anyone that needs to access it. So without further ado, I will hand over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Rich. So welcome, everybody. As Rich mentioned, kind of the whole point of this session really is that we as a consultancy, we get to spend a lot of time helping people figure out problems. And it's remarkable how often we seem to run into the same problems, regardless of what people are doing in the platform. Everybody knows, anyone who's ever worked in a marketing team knows that that handover and that communication with sales can be a tricky process. And so we've got a really old friend in the platform here in Salesforce Campaigns that I feel a lot of people, we constantly see people are using some of their functionality functionality, but not all of it. And so today we're going to kind of explore what can Salesforce campaigns do, sorry, just seeing we've got people with some technical issues. I don't know if there's much we can do about those if they're being blocked. But we're going to basically explore today. Can anyone actually hear me? Okay.
Great, thank you.
At least. Okay, thanks guys. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't going absolutely nuts. So for everyone that can hear me, unfortunately people are having issues. We're going to explore today Salesforce campaigns and how they can start to help us bridge that gap between marketing and sales, as well as hopefully build some really cool dashboards and things like that off the back of it. So we're going to start the session by talking a bit around campaigns and member statuses. We're then going to talk about a really useful feature that a lot of people don't really seem to use as much as I think is deserved, which is using our Salesforce campaign membership to actually do segmentation within Pardot or marketing cloud account engagement. I'm still very much a Pardot person. I'm aware the name has changed. We're then going to talk about being able to automate that process, which is where we get some really key visibility within Salesforce of how people are engaging. And then I'm going to kind of tie this all together by getting you to think about actually this data that we're now generating, this activity data that we can visualize. How can we make best use of that? And the way we're going to do that is by really leveraging the power of Salesforce reports as well as Salesforce dashboards to make use of all of this. So Salesforce campaigns, whether you refer to Salesforce, Sales Cloud is the official name, but we usually call it Salesforce still. They've been around for an awfully long time. They are a feature that almost everyone is using, but not everyone is using to their fullest extent. So within our clients and the things that we work with them on, we fairly often see campaigns used as a way to group leads and contacts. We also are starting to see more and more people attributing their revenue to campaigns. Those are the kind of things we're seeing a lot of. But with Pardot, if you are a Pardot customer, there is so much more that you can be doing now. So it's going to be things like selecting audiences for your sends, surfacing that lead and contact engagement in Salesforce, as well as building really cool reports and dashboards that give you that deeper insight into what people are doing. And the nice thing about those reports and dashboards is that they're in Salesforce. We are no longer keeping all of that data secret and stored down in Pardot. Those people that need to see it, the sales teams in charge of these leads and contacts, we can generate these reports that will sit in front of them and they can immediately see what those people are up to. Now, some of you may have engagement history turned on, and it does some of this. But engagement history only goes so far. So for those of you that are perhaps using solutions, like if you're using a webinar provider, for example, that doesn't have a native connector to the platform, you are not going to see that show up in the engagement history dashboard in the way that a GoToWebinar would. So we're really looking at building a solution here that almost everybody should be able to integrate in some way. It just sometimes requires a little bit of thought to how we're going to do it. And I'm going to show you some of those methods today. So most of what we're going to talk around today, and this is usually an immediate kind of indicator of whether or not somebody is using Salesforce campaigns to their fullest extent. The real pivot for what we're talking about today is something called Salesforce campaign member statuses. And it still surprises me how few people use these. So if I was going to go into Salesforce, under my campaigns tab, I can take a look into, just for example, let's see, I've got a Salesforce campaign for this webinar today, for example. And what a lot of people do is they have these campaign members. And I'm sure a lot of people are doing this. Your sales teams are probably doing this. We can add our leads and our contacts to a Salesforce campaign for visibility. It's a nice way of grouping leads and contacts because usually they sit in different tabs in the platform. This gives us a nice central location. But what people don't do as much as I think they should is leverage this related list at the top here. And sometimes it may not show up on your screen by default. If it's not, I would kind of recommend this is something that I would recommend everybody starts looking at or thinking about. Campaign member statuses can be used to represent how somebody can engage with that piece of marketing. So for example, this is a campaign that is going to represent a webinar we're doing. So we can build all of our invites, much as we've done today. You've all received invites. You filled out a form. On the Salesforce side of things, we can set up these campaign member statuses to represent how each person could engage with this particular campaign. So we might start with something really basic like a member, but then we can, as people go through that journey that we're building as part of the campaign, we can update them to reflect what they're doing. So if somebody signs up, we can set them to registered. If they decline, if we've set up a link where somebody can click it to decline, we can set them to declined. If they attend, we can set them to attended, which is buried somewhere under here. And if they registered but didn't turn up, we can set them to no show. Right. So these campaign member statuses, they are totally flexible for any campaign, as long as you've got the correct permissions, which is sometimes a stumbling block, I admit. But as long as you've got the correct permissions, if you want to add campaign member statuses to a campaign, if I've got this campaign, I want to add something new, I just click new and I just type in that new status. Okay. So we can build out those different touch points that someone can have with a campaign and register each of those as statuses within that campaign. Now in Salesforce, when I look at my campaign members, you can see that it will now build me a view that looks a bit like this. So I can see that within this webinar campaign here, rather than just seeing this long list of people, I know that there were 26 people that registered, 5 declined, 4 were invited and we didn't get a response, and 2 were members. So they may have been unmailable. We couldn't send them the invite. So we're already starting to see that there are things that you can put into Salesforce campaigns. Can campaign member status be automated? So it's a good question, Martin. There are 2 answers depending on how you're asking for this. So yes, you can automate these campaign member statuses being updated, which we're going to talk about today. You can also set it up so that, for example, if you set up a webinar campaign, you can set up automations using Salesforce Flow that would pull in the correct campaign member statuses for that type of campaign. So yes to both parts of that, depending on which one you're asking about. We will be looking today at how you can automate these being updated.
Cool. It's also worth saying, sorry to jump in, that you can be, there's no limit, is there, on the number of statuses that you can include per campaign?
I've gone up to 20 before. I'm not sure if there's a cap higher than that. I don't know if there's an official number.
Which I'd imagine covers most marketing campaign statuses. But, you can split them out. So for webinars, you might have a watched on demand status, for example. Yep. For an in-person event, it might be based on sessions, for example. So you can get much more granular, can't you?
Absolutely. And it can be totally flexible by the type of content you're doing. So these are some examples I have here. So the webinar one we've just looked at, that may have statuses of member, invited, registered, declined, attended, no-showed. If we were sending an email, for example, and we wanted to flag in Salesforce how that lead or contact had engaged, we could have member. When we send them the email, we'll set them to sent. If they open it, we can set them to opened, clicked, and potentially engaged as well. So if we actually wanted them to go and perhaps fill out a form off of some content we'd sent them, this could be an example of that. And we also do a lot of things around product awareness as well. So this would be things like, while we're working out what somebody's interested in, we design these really nice nurture campaigns where we're trying to work out which of our products or services somebody might be interested in. So we build our nurture. We can do this in an engagement studio, as I'll show you later. And we can have it update so that actually we can figure out, yep, they remember. Then they might be in a definition phase where we're finding out what they're interested in. We could also highlight whether they're engaged with product A, engaged with product B, engaged with product C. And obviously the handy thing here is that lead or contact record in Salesforce, we can now see which product they're engaging with in our Pardot marketing. So really, really useful for starting to pull that engagement information out of Pardot, because Pardot's really good, but a big stumbling block that we often get with people is that most teams never seem to have enough Pardot licenses for their sales teams to have full access, or sometimes any access at all. If you've got a massive sales team, there is no way you can give all of them access to your Pardot instance. It just doesn't work. And yet they're going to want to know what people are getting up to, what their leads and contacts are doing, because that kind of data, that rich engagement data, informs those conversations and gives them a much bigger advantage when they're trying to get a deal over the line. So this is how we can start to flag that. Obviously, it's not really sustainable for us to be going into the campaign every time and updating these people manually. I don't want to be going into Pardot, seeing all the people that opened it, then going back into the Salesforce campaign and changing all those people to opened. That's a very slow way of doing it. So very, very fortunately, when you have Pardot, you can now use Pardot to automate these updates as people are engaging with the campaign material. So now we have Pardot activity visible in Salesforce without needing to give those people Pardot access. Now, I do have a quick question that I want to just pop up here, which will be, might be quite small for you guys over on the left-hand side, which is, do you guys have connected campaigns enabled? And the reason I'm asking this is, as you may be able to see on our notes slide here, connected campaigns, most of what we're talking about today, connected campaigns needs to be enabled for. I can see most people saying, yes, it is quite rare now. For those of you that aren't sure if your version of Pardot was created after on or after 2019, it's very likely this was enabled by default. But yeah, in order for a lot of this activity to work, the connected campaigns will need to be enabled because that improves the data share between Salesforce and Pardot. It's always important to remember as well that these campaign member statuses, as we update them, they're only going to work for people that already exist in Salesforce. So when we're talking about this, it's not going to be for representing all of the engagement that's happening in Pardot. We are specifically trying to pass across that information that is relevant and useful for those people that are already in Sales Cloud and engaged in selling conversations. And the third bit here, and we'll come onto this a little bit more, this works best with what I would refer to as a granular campaign strategy. So rather than just making a campaign for 2024 webinars, I would be making a campaign for each webinar or for each email send. So it doesn't work, in this way. It doesn't necessarily work for everybody in the way I'm about to demonstrate, but you can start thinking about some of these things. But it will work most effectively when you're making campaigns regularly for each of your marketing activities. So now that we've got the assumptions out of the way, let me just
Paul, quick question there from Becky. How can I see if the connected campaign is enabled?
So we can go into, we're going to nip down into our account engagement app here, or Pardot, or whatever it is your organization has named it. And if you have admin access, we can go into account engagement settings, into our connected area here. And then on our Salesforce connector, under edit settings, and this is where you may get caught up with the permission side of things if you don't have access. And it is under our campaigns tab here. And you'll be able to see if this box is checked here, enabled connected campaigns and engagement history. So as long as you have access to do those things, you should be able to see these settings. So that's where we can check it.
I hope that helps, Becky. If you struggle with that at all, ping us a note afterwards and we can help you out with it.
Yes, absolutely. Cool. So we've talked about campaign member status, and now we're going to go down and we're going to look very much on the Pardot side of how this all starts to fit together. But before we look at that, I just want to take a slight diversion to another really good feature that I feel is massively underrated by a lot of marketing teams at the moment, which is what I refer to as dynamic list campaign filters. So these turned up in spring 18. So that's going back quite a way now, obviously. We're looking back about 6 years. And I still don't see these being used with any great regularity. These filters are going to save you loads of time if you are currently those kind of in that group of people where, in order to build a send list in Pardot, you are currently getting an exported list from your sales team, and you're then doing a list upload when you send an email. We see it all the time. There are quicker ways to achieve it. And it also puts the onus back on your sales team to be able to manage which of their prospects, which of their leads and contacts that they would like you to send to. So these things are contained. I don't unfortunately have time to talk through creating a dynamic list in any great detail. But for those of you that are familiar with dynamic list, a dynamic list is a self-governing list in Pardot. We essentially set a list of criteria, and this list will automatically filter the entire database and pull back any people that meet the criteria we've set. Now, I need to stress, I guess, before I start demoing in here too much, this is a developer sandbox instance that only has a load of rubbish data in here that I play around with. So none of this is particularly accurate. But what I can demonstrate is how these filters and criteria work. So when we create a dynamic list, if I want to use that already created segmentation, we've already looked, and I see this a lot, people making campaigns in Salesforce that contain both leads and contacts to basically create an audience. Rather than us needing to export that list and re-upload it into Pardot, we can pull through that grouping using these filters in dynamic lists. Now, you would almost never use both together. I just have them here to demonstrate. So the first one is this one here, prospect CRM campaign. And if I have the operator as is, it will give me a list of all of my connected campaigns. This is why connected campaigns have to be turned on for this to work. And I would then be able to choose any of my connected campaigns. And these are just campaigns that we've created in Salesforce that's pulling down into Pardot now. And so this Maximising Salesforce Campaigns, that is the campaign we were looking at a moment ago. If I was to run that, I just delete this one. If I was to run this list now, it would go and find all those people that were in that campaign, so all those leads and contacts. It will find their matching prospect records, and it will put them all right in this list for me. So we are no longer having to do a export and a re-upload. We don't have to do any of that. All we need to do is create a dynamic list and say, I want everybody who is in the Salesforce campaign and whatever the campaign name is. And the really nice thing about this, again, it's another streamlining of that relationship with sales teams, because if they say to you, oh, I want to add somebody to the send list, you can say, well, that's fine. You just need to add them to the campaign. It's nice and easy for them now. They're all familiar with Salesforce campaigns. They know how to do that. They'll just go to the lead, click add to campaign. When they add them to the campaign, their Pardot records are going to join this list automatically. So we don't have to do any song and dance anymore. We can start to automate this process. To tie in with something that we've introduced on the campaign member status side, you can actually be even more specific than this. So rather than me wanting everybody who is in that list, for example, let's say I wanted to send an email to all the people that had actually registered. I have a slightly more specific rule, which is prospect CRM campaign status, where I can then choose the campaign. And then I go another level up in specificity, and I can actually pick all the people in the campaign that have a particular member status. So for those of you that were really paying attention early on, we had 26 people set as registered in that campaign. If I was to choose this criteria and click run rules, this list is then going to populate in Pardot. I would have that same list of 26 people set as registered. So we now have the ability to build broad audiences from campaigns, but we can also be more specific. And in this scenario, we're only targeting people that have actually reached a certain point of engagement with that. Obviously, there's no point us sending by the way, this webinar is happening tomorrow type email to people that have not registered. That would be quite a jarring experience for those people that hadn't signed up. So this is how we can start to use that audience selection. I see this starting to creep in more, but I still think where people aren't using campaign member statuses a lot, I think if you start to adopt campaign member statuses, I think this becomes a very, very valuable segmentation tool and a massive time saver when you're working with sales teams. So that was my slight diversion into a segmentation side of things. What I want to come back to now is that concept of campaign member statuses and how we're going to start to make our lives easier. Because we've already said, I'm hoping anyway, people that are watching this, I always see the value in being able to flag this activity in Salesforce, but it's not sustainable to be consistently going in and setting everyone to opened, clicked, attended, registered, whatever it is. That's not sustainable to be doing manually for every one of your campaigns. Luckily, Pardot has loads and loads of automation tools. And since the inception of connected campaigns in 2018, we have been able to use all of these to automate this process. So we can use automation rules, we can use engagement studios, we can use segmentation rules, and we can use completion actions. Now, if I drag on, this is my Blue Peter moment. For those of you that are from the UK will hopefully get that reference. Here's some that I made earlier. So this is one of the more, if it decides to load, this is a slightly complex version. I'm not entirely sure all the people on here. We've got 38 people in here at the moment. It'll be at probably different levels of comfort with the engagement studio. But this is a very simple example of an engagement studio. I'm glad you get it as well, Steve. Of an engagement studio where we've built a customer journey, but we are also building in this automation of updating campaign member statuses.
Chef, can you zoom in a touch more?
Possibly zoom in a touch more.
Thank you.
Can people see this?
Yeah, that's much better.
I'm working on a nice big screen, so I don't have that problem. So in this scenario, I'm not going to go into loads and loads of depth about how an engagement studio works, but in this journey, when we start our engagement studio, we're going to send people our invite, and we're going to straight away, using this automation, as soon as they receive that email, we're then going to set them to invited on that Salesforce campaign. No more questions from the sales guys about if we invited their lead or contact to the event. You can just tell them to go and check the campaign. They'll be able to see it over there. We're then going to listen out for whether or not somebody either filled out our registration page or they clicked the decline link in the email. And if they click the decline link, we can automatically set them to declined. And when we're looking at sending our next emails, we just don't send it to people that declined. There's no point in sending them invite to if they've said they're not coming. If they have
sorry, Jeff, quick question on that. Can you then set people on other unrelated journeys based on that campaign status change?
Yeah, you could do so because we've got that filter on that list. I could say if they are in that campaign with a status of declined, that would automatically add them to that dynamic list. And we can be using that to start other journeys if we wanted to.
Yeah, cool.
We are then anybody that doesn't respond at all, we'll just end. And we can look at the people that have engaged, so the people that have registered. So everyone that ends up here has filled out the registration page. We automatically set those people to registered. We can then send perhaps a reminder email before the session, and then we will, after the session, have our list of attendees. If they're on the list of attendees, we'll set them to attended. If they're not, we'll set them to no-show. So those are people that did sign up. So that's a sign of interest, but unfortunately they couldn't attend. Within this journey, all I have to do to make all of that happen is press start. Right? And I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's switched on, it will run. I'm no longer having to worry about checking these lists of people. If they've been invited, they will be set to invited. If they've declined, they will be set to declined, all within this studio here. And so then all I have to do, and all the sales guys have to do, is look in Salesforce. And if they want, oh, did they register for the event? We just go look at the campaign. There's a list of your leads and contacts with all of the status. You can see if they've registered or not in there because we've automated that process. We don't have to be looking around, checking lists ourselves. We don't just have to use the engagement studio. So we can also use things like automation rules. So automation rules, for those of you that aren't super familiar, they come in the two parts. There are rules. So those are the people that are going to be affected. And then there's actions, which is what we're going to do to people. I'll zoom in a little bit so we can see it. So in this case, anybody who is on the list hot prospects is going to be added to our Salesforce campaign. In this case, we're just going to put them in as a member. So this might be something we do ahead of the campaign. We want to go, right, we want to invite people to our event. Who should we be inviting? Let's get all the people that are currently hot prospects. Those are the kind of people we want involved with these events. You can also use these. So if you, for example, uploaded an attended list and you weren't using an engagement studio, you could upload and you could say prospect is on the list, attendees, add to campaign with the status attended. We would just set that instead. So we can use this to automate any part of the process if we need to. And our third option here is actually on forms. So most common most commonly used are completion actions on forms. So anybody that completes this form will trigger this completion action. And usually what we see is we build a registration form in Pardot. When people fill it out, we'll add them to the campaign with the status registered. So we can automate every step of this journey. If we're using Engagement Studios, we can do it all in one place. If we're not using the Engagement Studio, we've got automation rules, we've got segmentation rules, we've got completion actions to set these things and make them really, really easy to update. And the effect then, as I've probably said a number of times now, is that over in Salesforce now, we have this full log of everybody who's been engaged and to what level. And I've just put in here as an example of the slides that will be available after the session. We've got our campaign status, choose your campaign name with status. And you always add to campaign with a status of your choice. And I've put some examples of things you might try and do and how you could achieve those. So the result of the things we've talked about so far, if I just navigate back into, oh, that's the same app I'm already in. If I can make my brain work, I'll navigate back into Sales Cloud. And if I take a look into my campaigns, let's look at a webinar that we have done in the past, for example. I've got my list of campaign members, and I've got them all listed by their status. So I can see all the people that attended, people that declined, people that we didn't get a response from, they were just invited, people that were members, so we didn't actually get a chance to invite them, they might be unmailable, for example, and people that no-showed, so registered but didn't attend. It's all visible. And that extends onto, that's taking me into campaign member. If I go into a lead record, so what they will also be able to do, so somebody on the sales side, if they go on to a lead or contact record, and I scroll down, the campaign history list, assuming it's on the page view, if not, it's a good one to add if you start going down this route. We can now see our campaign history related list. I can see the campaigns they've attended and, well, campaigns they've been engaged with, and I can see their status within that campaign. Okay, so it's increasing visibility. They want to know how people have been engaging with our marketing activity overall. We can see it right here on the lead or contact record, broken down by history. But that's not particularly exciting, right? That's not going to get a sales team particularly on board. They're going to go to a lead record, they're going to have a look, and they're going to say, right, okay, I can see what they've been up to. But it's not a broad view, right? We're looking at a single campaign or we're looking at a single person. That's not really giving them much of a big picture. And so it can be quite difficult sometimes to get buy-in about those things. And so this is where we want to take that initial piece of data we're now generating, that campaign member status is something we're generating consistently. We can now use the wonderful world of Salesforce reporting and dashboards to generate something really, really nice and to start to prove why it's worth us putting in this effort of setting up these campaigns. And this is where I think a lot of people start to think about why they might want to shift their campaign strategy. So as an example of the kind of things you can build, this is a dashboard that I have built based solely on the campaigns that we've looked at today. There are 3 campaigns involved in making this dashboard, which are our 3 webinar campaigns in here. So before I dive in, actually, I've got a little slider to pop up on the screen just to get a feel for the people that are in the call. How comfortable with your organization with Salesforce dashboards? You can actually put a stamp on the screen to let me know how you're getting on. Are we novices? Are we wizards? We feel somewhere in the middle? Bit of a mixture.
It's definitely on the more on the novice side.
Yeah, a few pop up there in the middle. Excellent. Yeah, so this is one of those things where we're seeing it like increasingly to improve this real data handover side of things. Let me just close that off. Thank you all for your engagement on that one. I will need to remember to share my screen again so you can see what I'm talking about. Dashboards offer a solution to this problem in a very visual, very easy to use way. Okay, this is a dashboard that is going to show me, at the moment, we're looking at all the campaigns within a filter. So I'm actually, this dashboard itself is only set up to look at our 2024 webinars. There were 99 campaign members involved. We had 32 attendees. And over here on the right-hand side, I can see that so far in 2024, there's 32 attended. We had 16 declines, 10 invited, 9 members, 26 registered. So that's for the one that we're running today. Okay, so I can get this like big picture look. Right? And this is really nice as a marketing team to be able to see that kind of data all summarized in one place. Now, this dashboard is built based on, I think, 6 reports. As part of our follow-up to this webinar, I will send you a step-by-step guide of how I built this dashboard. That is something that, for coming to this event, and thank you all for attending, I will give you that resource to take away and have a look at. It may work for you, it may not, but that's something that I think is a useful takeaway to show you how these reports are built and how we can create these dashboards.
That's a great idea, Chef. And I think this is certainly, from a marketing perspective, it's the real aha moment, because from a reporting angle, this is the kind of thing that's really easily visible to other stakeholders, revenue, wider leadership across the business, that you can share as part of standard reporting.
Yep.
And obviously for sales and revenue leadership, it has the same power from how are our team tracking from marketing activity, where's the engagement coming from marketing activity. But then, like you say, from a salesperson perspective, they can also utilize dashboarding for their own activity tracking as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad you said sales and revenue, because that's the segue into the next bit of the dashboard. So at the top here, we've got all of our lovely campaign data, which we as a marketing team can use as a marker of how well, our invites and our content's been working. Where we can really add value in that streamlining of communication to sales is where we can start to build reports like this. So these 3 reports here are engagement by my leads, my contacts, and my accounts. These are actually personal to me. So I'm currently viewing the dashboard as myself. Just as demonstrate, if I was to view the dashboard as somebody else, you will see these completely change. So we can build adaptive dashboards that are displaying data specific to the salesperson that are summarizing what their people have been doing. So if I'm going to view it as myself again, so these will pop up. And now I can see, and we can put the nice thing is these dashboards can go directly on somebody's homepage if we wanted to. And I'm looking, and as a salesperson, I'm going, right, what have my guys been up to? I've had, from my leads, 21 people have attended webinars. And because we've built really nice reports, if they click on that, they'll be able to see their leads, which campaign it was, and obviously these are all people that have attended. So we're starting to build, we've gone from a fairly simplistic approach, which is, so we can flag on the campaign what people have been up to. But because we now have the data in Salesforce, we're no longer limited by Pardot's slightly stunted reporting, to be slightly kind. We can now use the amazing power of Salesforce reports and the filtering data, which we can then report on these dashboards. And this is where I think the idea of having to slightly shift your campaign strategy starts to kind of come into people's mind, why this might be worth doing, because we can start to represent data in this way. I've got an adaptive dashboard. Depending on who's looking at it, they can now see what their leads, contacts, or accounts, if you're an account-based approach sales function, you can see what they've been getting up to. What we can also do using revenue recognition is look at overall revenue data. So the number of opportunities we've generated, the opportunity value generated, and the opportunity value won. And what we can also do is filter based on which campaign it was. So if I was to look back at last month's webinar, again, this is all sandbox data. This is not an accurate representation. I'm not giving away company secrets here. But if I were to look at that, last month's webinar in this example generated 2 opportunities with £78,000 revenue generated, and we closed all 78,000. Okay. Again, I will show you how to build these reports. All of them, I'll do a step-by-step as part of this follow-up. And this is where you can start to build really nice representations for your data. And I think this is where people start to really understand why this is such a powerful thing to add to your arsenal when it comes to these updates.
Yeah, this is great stuff, Chef, because this is the point of collecting the data, isn't it, really? So that you can visualize it in a way that's really easy for multiple stakeholders.
We all love a good graph.
We do. Us marketeers certainly do.
Cool. So one of my final slides is just something to consider, because I've said the words campaign strategy several times, and it sometimes feels a bit like word salad. I think when I talk about campaign strategy, I kind of usually refer to two things. One is how often you're making campaigns. And as I say, granular usually works best for this kind of approach. We would want to make a campaign for each activity we're doing. But a lot of people don't like that. And it doesn't work for some teams because they lose that overarching view, because all your data is then kind of just dropped into each of these campaigns. And then short of building loads of Salesforce reports, it can be quite hard to get an overall picture. And this is where campaign hierarchies can come in really useful. So if you haven't used these before, and I am conscious of time, so I'll talk quickly. When you create a campaign in Salesforce, you can select a parent campaign. And in this case, my parent campaign is 2024 webinars. Okay. This then means that I get two things. I still get the granularity and the ability to do all the things I've talked about today. So setting those campaign statuses per campaign. But what we can also do is by using a parent campaign, that will provide you roll-up data. So if I were to go and look at the 2024 parent campaign, I was to look at details, I can actually look at all the data within a hierarchy. So I can view the contacts, leads, opportunities, value that is within all of those campaigns. So I haven't gone through it all, but there are those three campaigns I've looked at. So the February, March, and April webinar campaigns, they all roll up into this 2024 webinars campaign. So I can get that central look at how everything's performing, but I also get the granular approach as well. So best of both worlds, hopefully. So as a quick summary, if you go down this route, if you really commit to making this work, use those automation tools, make sure you've got the correct campaign member status for campaigns, you can get really, really nice tools out the back of it. We can build those salesperson specific reports. We can visualize our data on dashboards. We suddenly have massive transparency between what's happening in Pardot and what's happening in Salesforce. There's no longer a disparity between the two. And it really enables a sales team to engage more meaningfully and have those smarter conversations about what their leads and contacts have been up to most recently. And it also means that if there is an opportunity generated, it's much easier for a salesperson to attribute it to the correct campaign, because they can see what the person's been engaging with as the opportunity is opening. And they can therefore attribute that opportunity to your marketing campaign. And suddenly we have some marketing influenced revenue, which everybody likes. That brings me to the end. So thank you for your attendance. Rich, I know you've got a bit of a wrap up. I just want to say my final piece today, conscious of time. I know some of you may have watched this and gone, I'm not quite sure how this works for us. We might have a slightly different strategy that we're going with or that we're currently using, and that's fine. If you are still interested in how this might work for you, feel free to get in touch. That's the kind of thing that we do all the time. That's where we're going to come and help. So if you're looking at this and going, I want those dashboards, but I'm not quite sure how to make it happen, get in touch either at training@clevertouch.com or via one of our forms on our website, and we'll be more than happy to give you a hand.
Yeah, and you've basically just stolen my wrap up there, Chef, which is fine because it means I don't have to say it now. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining. We will be sharing the recording with everyone. So I know there were some people that were struggling at the start to hear and see us. I'm not sure if they've been able to reconnect and join okay, but we'll send the recording. So please do share it with anyone in your team that you think it's relevant for, and we'll follow up in the next couple of days with that recording and Paul's step-by-step guide to building the dashboards.
Excellent.
Perfect. All right. Thanks for joining, everyone. We'll see you on the next webinar soon.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.